you want to define yourself as the most broad definition that will get you the most work, or will convey the idea of what you do to the most amount of people. And I think as you go along in your career, you find what you like to do and what you don't like to do, and what you get paid for and what you do for fun. And so when you find that like kind of cross section between what you get paid for and what you like to do, that's what you define yourself as.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Comics Grind. I am one of your hosts, Nico Rodriguez.
And I'm Ken, aka Comic Ken on YouTube.
And thank you so much for joining us here again for another weekly comics discussion. Before we get started, we'd like to wish a very special and happy birthday to Sergio Aragones, master of cartoons, amazing legendary cartoonist. He turns 86 years old today as of this recording. Obviously this recording is coming out a little bit later than his actual birthday, but this September, man, he turns 86 years old, Ken. Isn't that pretty freaking wild?
I was surprised he was still alive, actually. So I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, he's dude, and he's like the best thing about it, he's 86 years old and he's still like putting out comics regularly, still like loves drawing. I recently for you viewers out there, there's a couple things to check out if you want to listen to Sergio in like full conversation mode. If you go to the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube channel, maybe about two or 3 years ago, they did a really like a maybe over 2 hour long interview with him.
Dang.
Just talking about like all his Mad Magazine days, his process, Gru days, and everything. So certainly check that out.
And I think that's the best when an older creator is still going at it and still passionate about the business, that they just keep producing stuff. And
Yeah.
it's like they don't even it's like they're ignoring time, you know? It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like I kind of, I just wanted to like listen to like a new fresh interview from him. So like I YouTubed, Sergio Aragones interviews, and one came up from about like 4 months ago. And man, he is still like so lively, so energetic, still into drawing and making comics. And it was honestly like just very, very cool to see that because some of these cartoonists, some of these guys, they start getting up there in age, and maybe they're not so talkative about their profession. They're not so in tune with the industry and kind of drawing and everything, but
Right.
he is still like 100% in tip top shape, man. And like in that video, he was actually like holding up like new Gru pages and like new covers that he's working on, and just like full cognizance, like full understanding of everything. Like it's pretty awesome, man. So
Nice,
yeah, I'm,
nice.
I'm happy to see that he's like still freaking making comics and into
Yeah.
that late in his life.
Awesome, man.
But yeah, so we just wanted to kind of, he's kind of one of those guys that's like very inspirational to me. I'm a cartoonist by trade, and I love that cartoony stuff. So
Right.
he's just the absolute master of it. So every time I'm trying to finish out my Gru collection, I'm only like maybe a third of the way there, but anytime I see his stuff, I'm just like immediately like, oh, let me look at this, let me kind of study it. It's
Right.
so I'm happy he's still making comics, man, and hopefully he keeps making comics for quite some time.
Nice.
But yeah, so happy 86th birthday to Sergio. We are admirers of your work, and the small chance that he's tuning into this Comics Grind podcast. You know.
Yeah, hopefully.
But Ken, man, what's been going on in the comics world this week? How have you been in terms of work and I know you got a coloring gig and all that kind of stuff. You've been balancing it pretty well this week.
Yeah, yeah. I finally started working on a sample for a color page that for an assignment that I got this week, and I've also started to find more and more time to work on actual air writer pages and start getting those done. I feel like I've figured out enough of the marketing stuff to a point where I can start putting out more content, putting out more Instagram and Twitter posts to where I can like get my name out there in front of more people while I work on my stuff at the same time. So it's not I'm not fully focused on 100% like reading all the books anymore. I've gotten like a good working knowledge that I can like actually use on a daily basis. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, nice, dude. That's good. You know, you've got it. I think I have like a handful of projects too that I'm balancing it. That I'm balancing, and it gets a little overwhelming sometimes. But it
Right.
seems like you're kind of in a good headspace right now to kind of section up those between the rest of your life that's going on. So
Yep.
it's good stuff, man. Um, for me, in terms of stuff, I'm still painting away, man. I'm a good as of this recording, I have 23 pages left to paint.
Nice.
And then interior artwork wise, I am complete. Then I still have a bunch of scanning, a bunch of kind of digital cleanup,
Right.
designing, formatting, all that good stuff. So still a bit of a long ways to go, but I'm getting real close to finishing out the artwork portion. And then,
Hmm.
I really think on the path that I am right now, like I think I can get this thing buttoned up in almost like print ready format by the end of the year.
Nice.
I should be able to at least, and then from there, it's kind of figuring out how to distribute Kickstarter, all that kind of good stuff.
Right.
So yeah, man, it's been a process. It's been working on this damn thing for over a year now, so
Yeah.
we're certainly getting there. Um, Other than that, I think so. I'm kind of
You
in
mentioned something about like GalaxyCon
yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
little
So
bit before the start of the podcast.
yeah, man. GalaxyCon, I did GalaxyCon this past weekend, so I'm still kind of like in decompression mode from from this weekend because it was honestly it was a real long one, man. It was a 3-day show in Austin.
Right.
So within driving distance for me is about a 3-hour drive for me. Luckily, I have family that lives there, so I was able to kind of stay about well, they live about 40 minutes away from the convention center, so it was
Dang.
actually kind of a long drive,
Right.
there and back each day, but it was a 3-day show, man, and it was long, man. The, exhibition hall, Friday, it was open from 2 to 8, so it was about
Uh-huh.
a 6-hour shift. Saturday, it was open from, like, 10 AM to 8 PM, so it was like a
Hmm.
10-hour shift, and then Sunday, it was open from 10 a.m. to 8 or 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's
Hmm.
like another 8-hour shift. So like all weekend, man, it felt long. Some of these shows kind of fly by, but this one,
Right.
um, we had probably the worst uh location in the entire artist alley because we were kind of put in the furthest back corner of artist
Uh-huh.
alley and we're literally staring at a gray jail cell like wall for you know 3 days straight.
Dang.
um
How does
and it was
that
like uh-huh.
how does that affect sales in terms of where you're placed?
Yeah, man, it really does, especially in this.
Also, I'm sorry, as a follow-up, like who's placed in the prime time spots? Like were there any names that you can mention?
Yeah, so I guess to answer that second question, some of the big names that were there. You had guys like Ben Templesmith, you had Howard Chaykin,
Oh,
you
wow.
had, Simon Bisley, you
Dang.
had,
Okay.
Mirka Andolfo.
Oh, nice.
I mean, there is some guests, man. There were some really good
Right.
guests. Fabio Moon, who I'm a huge fan of,
Dang,
I got
okay.
to chat with for a while. So they had some big primetime comics creators guests, which was honestly one of the big reasons why I wanted to do the show.
Right.
Because I saw that oh man, they're actually focusing on comics. But they're still got their big time pop culture guests too. They had like Mike Tyson there for for Saturday.
Whoa.
Yeah, they had like a wild lineup, man. It was crazy.
Right.
Um, but in terms of like locationally and how that affects sales and like incoming traffic, yeah, man, it can really affect you. And I think especially in this one, so I went with my friends Chris, Milton, and Justin,
Mhm.
and we all had tables next to each other, and they put us in like I said, like the furthest back corner up against this wall. I mean, traffic wise, like some people probably didn't even know we were there because it was
Yeah.
just like a very odd section of Artist Alley. Um, so like traffic flow, goes to the center and they go to like the pop culture guest and all that.
Right.
But the way in which we were situated, it was like back left corner up against a wall. So like just the traffic flow was just not going there.
Dang.
Um, and that isn't to say like we didn't get some people come by and check out our work and buy our work,
Right.
prints, comics, all that kind of stuff. Had some creators kind of come up and ask, hey, how long have we been doing this, that kind of thing. Got a handful of followers. Um, I think the highlight of it was so I met Fabio Moon. He actually came to Houston for a signing
Uh-huh.
uh, a few days before the Austin show. Um, so I spoke with him for a while there and told him I was going to be in Austin, and it was pretty cool because like at the Austin show, he kind of came up to my table and was like chatting with me and the guy. So it was kind of cool because he was like, he's an artist that is in my top artists of all time, and Day
Right.
Tripper, I think spoke about it before. That's one of my top graphic novels ever. So
Nice.
super cool getting to kind of meet with him and chat with him. Um, but not, there's some good experiences, there's some good takeaways out of this show. But honestly, it was a little demoralizing just because, it was a little more of an expensive show and um it just had an odd vibe around that corner that we were at.
Right.
Just because like just visually, it was, like, just kind of obstructing with the big
Dang.
wall ahead of us, and, like, traffic was just, like, not flowing like it should be.
Right.
Um, so, yeah, man, but, hey, some of these experiences are good, some of them are not as good, but you're kind of always gonna take something away from them.
Yeah.
And I certainly did, I certainly, met some new people, got the product out to, to a show in Austin. So, hey, man, next year if it happens again, I may or may not do it. We'll see. you know.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that was kind of my week over at GalaxyCon. Still kind of decompressing from it. So it
Okay.
is it is the con life, man. It is the comics grind as
Yeah.
as as we talk about. Um, but other than that, man, main topic wise for this week.
Yeah.
What you got for the main topic? You got anything cool?
Well, we discussed it a little bit before the start of the show, and you said you always had like some kind of trouble like distinguishing or like uh giving yourself a definition when you first started out as an artist. You were like, okay, illustrator, am I an illustrator, a cartoonist, an artist? Uh like how could I define myself? And that's basically what you mentioned to me at the beginning. Like, did you want to
Yeah.
expand on that? What was
Yeah.
your issue with it?
Yeah. I guess just and this kind of conversation might be a little more oriented for the people who are kind of just starting out in comics, whether artist, writer, whatever. Um, maybe, those who are a little more established may have already kind of figured this part of the game out. But it was just really kind of it was a thought that I had this weekend and just kind of this week thinking. Whenever I was first starting out, there was these titles that always stood out to me, and that's the artist, the illustrator, and the cartoonist. And I always had kind of trouble like distinguishing these distinct titles. and like, how to quote unquote label myself. Because, as we all know, like as you start to do these things and start to get into the comics industry, start to sell books and all that, you've got to think about things like banners, with proper labeling on it. You got to think about, say you're opening up a new Instagram for your artwork, you got to have a bio in there. Like, what do you put in your bio? If there was an editor or somebody searching you on your website or whatever it may be, how do you designate yourself, in terms of the industry to kind of, portray exactly what you want to portray? And it
Right.
was kind of, when I was first starting out, it was kind of always a difficult thing because it was always like, there's a lot of fuzz. Like, why are some people called an artist? Why is a children's book artist called an illustrator? Why
Right.
is a comics guy called a cartoonist? So yeah, I just thought it would be a kind of a good discussion to have, especially for some of the viewers out there who may be just kind of starting out or trying to, get their feet under them to kind of, establish themselves in the industry. Um, so yeah, it was just kind of a question I had. Like, Ken, in
Yeah.
terms of this, like
Well,
someone who's just starting out, how would you kind of
mhm.
like guide them in terms of deciphering those distinct roles?
Well, I don't really have much I guess advice on like where to guide them per se, but I'll just say what it was in my experience. So like starting out in art, I was always looking at other artists online at what they were doing and whatnot, and I was thinking like, okay, maybe I should just do the same thing that they're doing. Maybe do some like fan art to try to get some like attention or whatever. Um, but for the most part, I was on DeviantArt. Like I started off on DeviantArt, looking at other people's art, trying to study, trying to get like as good as them. And my whole thing was from the very beginning, I wanted to become a manga artist. I wanted to become a manga-ka. And I was always geared towards telling my own stories in comics and eventually getting like some kind of anime or something one day. But over time, it's like the goal shifts and changes, and you start to find your proclivities in terms of what you like to draw, what duties or tasks that you like to do in the artistic process, and you start getting opportunities based on um those inclinations that you do in art. So like if you're good at like storyboarding, people will start to get you on animation projects. I happen to be good enough at coloring, so where I'm a colorist now. People hire me out for coloring gigs. I originally just wanted to do black and white, manga, like make black and white comics, and then eventually get an anime out of that. But I eventually settled on Cartoonist because I basically do everything. I do the writing, the art, the color, and I put out a webcomic. And that's what I always thought of as I always thought of webcomic artists as cartoonists. Because webcomic artists is harder to fit on a business card.
Yeah.
So if you just go with the term cartoonist, then I think that covers the broadest spectrum of what you're doing because it's like it covers everything in one word. And that's how you described Sergio Aragones without even thinking. You just said, "Oh, that's a cartoonist," because he just draws cartoons, he colors them, he writes them, he does all of it, and it's just a good umbrella term that encapsulates the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I think that, nowadays the term cartoonist is definitely oriented towards that, somebody who writes and draws their own comics.
Mhm.
But
Or like comic
I do
strips.
think, yeah, yeah, in comic strips, and I think that's, and that's also, you mentioned Sergio there. Um, he also has a designation of a cartoonist because, you know, when he first started, he was just doing strips, like one page
Mm.
gags, one strip gags. Um, so I do think that there's still, obviously towards like the general public, like the non, into comics public, I think that they're still going to think of the cartoonist as like, like a Sunday funnies guy, somebody who may have like a syndicated strip, or somebody who's doing like caricatures at like an amusement park or something. When you
Right.
say cartoonist, that might still have that stigma um around it, but
Yeah.
I also think that there's also a certain kind of because like here's the thing, like somebody like I can't think of anybody, but okay, so like Sean Gordon Murphy,
Yeah.
like he writes and draws his own
Yeah.
books, right? But
Uh-huh.
he calls himself an artist, a comics artist. I've never heard anybody refer to him as a cartoonist. Um,
Right.
and I think that that's because I think that there's like something within like comics, within the industry as a whole, that if you call yourself a cartoonist, it kind of associates you with something. And then if
Mhm.
you call yourself like a comics artist, it also associates you with something different.
Right.
And meaning like, okay, a cartoonist is a guy like, I'm gonna bring him up again, Stan Sakai, who I love.
Yeah.
You call him a cartoonist, right? He's a cartoonist
Mhm.
because he has like, and I don't know how to like exactly explain it, but like you look at him and you see, he's a cartoonist or
Yeah.
somebody. Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Oh, no, well, I was gonna say, with Sean Gordon Murphy, I always thought of him as, like, a writer artist, 'cause, he started off, like he did some of his own books, but mainly he was getting gigs on, like, American Vampire or, like, Joe the Barbarian, and he was just a really great, hired artist that you could get for your books, and it's only, like, not recently, but years ago that he started developing this, identity as a writer artist, but like you, I wouldn't necessarily call him a cartoonist because of, I guess, his style, because he's always drawing, like, Batman books and whatnot, but Batman isn't a quote unquote "cartoon," it's like it's a comic book. So he's a writer artist making his own Batman story and mythos, but he's not a cartoonist making his own uh indie title, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. And
Yeah,
yeah.
no, yeah, and I think that's why, like, and this is just from like my own perspective. I think if you want to be associated with like like a typical cartooned property. Like for instance, I'll bring up a guy like Noah Van Sciver. Noah Van Sciver, I've spoken about him. I can't remember if you're familiar with his work, Ken.
You told me
If
about him,
if
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If you guys aren't, if the viewers out there aren't familiar with Noah's work, go check him out. He's a fantastic cartoonist, as I say.
Right.
He does like a lot of like slice of life, a lot of auto bio stuff, but he also does, he has like a Paul Bunyan book out, things like that. But you look at him and you look at his style and his
Mhm.
stylistic choices, he is certainly like more of into like the alternative side of comics. He's got slice of life, he's got kind of these auto bio things going on. And you look at his style and you call him a cartoonist, it's almost like a branding mechanism for him to be labeled as a cartoonist rather than a comics artist, because
Mm.
there's a certain gravitas, not gravitas, but a certain aura or something around being called a cartoonist. Some may say like it's a little more of the pretentious nature because it's more of like an elite level of Will Eisner type
Jack
of
Davis.
thing. Yeah, but like for Noah, like it works for him because that's his brand, and like his brand feels like a cartoonist. you know so like, but if you're more of like, hey, I want to do like an X-Men type of thing, where you've
Mhm.
got big bad kind of action and muscles and things like that. I think you're better off branding yourself as like an artist.
Right.
rather than a cartoonist, because there really is like a distinct kind of audible uh aura around those two terms,
I know what
which I
you're
kind
saying.
of think is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely feel what you're saying because um cartoonist and mangaka or like manga artist, they mean the same thing in their respective languages, but in English, it's a lot cooler to call yourself a mangaka or a manga artist because it holds more weight because of the reputation of the manga artist over in Japan. It's just that if you're in America and you call yourself a manga artist, you have to bring your A game because you're being automatically compared to all the ones in Japan. So if you dare call yourself a manga artist in America, you have to actually be like really good. So that name holds that term or designation holds a lot of weight. So I personally call myself a cartoonist. That's what I put on all my business cards since I was in the Kubert School because I do everything. I color my stuff. So just the fact that I have color on my work takes me out of the designation of manga artist because everything in manga is black and white except for a few special pages here and there
Yeah.
or the cover. So I I'm basically in. I would put myself in the box of a web comic artist, but not a
Yeah.
webtoons artist. And there's even a further distinction in that. So
Gosh.
yeah, it branches everywhere, you know.
So like with the webcomic artist and a webtoon artist. So
Hmm.
as a webtoon artist, I guess kind of break that down for me and our audiences,
Mm.
because I'm not super familiar with the webtoons and the webcomics designations there.
Right. Okay. How do I break down webtoons? Um, if you're a webcomic artist, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a webtoon style artist, and I guess vice versa. I don't know. Both webtoons and webcomics go on the web, but webtoons is usually hosted on the website Webtoons, but they can be in webtoon style, which is like a panel on a long strip of, you know, on a long digital strip of paper.
Oh, okay. So a webtoons artist is someone who is specifically making the comic for like the scroll.
Yeah, you could
Okay.
say that for sure. And because I'm more of a web comic artist, like I'm making the comic for the web and then printing it out to sell later.
Yeah.
Um if I want to put my stuff on webtoons and have it be read more readily, I would have to split it up into boxes on that long strip so that people can read it and scroll while they're reading it. Because if
Yeah.
it's just a plain comic page on webtoons, people will be less inclined to read it. It would just that's just the way it is because that's what the readers are used to on that website. So if I just go in there on that platform and just start posting like full on comic pages, it's less likely to get read all the way through. So
Yeah.
you have to like adapt to the platform and and do it their way. And webtoons readers are used to having their webtoon come out on a weekly basis at the very least. They're used to having a good decent amount of content by the end of each week. Um when you create for webtoons, it's almost like the top webtoons are created on almost the same level as a manga artist because a manga artist has to produce like weekly or monthly strips, and those are like 30 or like they can be like from 20 pages per week to 45 pages per month.
Well,
And with a webtoon, it's counted by panels. So it can be up to like 75 panels of fully colored art every single week. And that's how the top of the top webtoons are. Those are usually created in Korea, but the top webtoon on webtoons is I think it's made in America and it's called Lore Olympus. It's like
yeah.
the top stuff on there is usually like romance genre
Mhm.
or action genre, or boys love genre, which We don't have to get into that today. But but that's usually what you'll find on webtoons. Web comics are more lax in that you can put out like 2 pages per week, and people will be happy with that because it's just like that's the pace that the artist can go because they're doing it completely by themselves, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that okay, cool. That makes sense now. Yeah, I know. I mean, I think, Lore Olympus is like so popular now, like it's in print. Like I see like hardcovers and stuff like at the comic shops and at Barnes and
In
Nobles,
Walmart,
like and yeah, in Walmart, like
yeah,
freaking insane, man. Insane.
yeah, it's crazy.
So okay, so we've broken down those things. Now the one kind of last thing that I always think about is like the term illustrator. So
Mm,
like I kind of want to get like your perspective and to those of you watching as well, like drop down your opinions on this in the comments below as well. Um like how do you define an illustrator? Because that term is kind of thrown around a lot, and especially a lot in like children's books. You'll hear, so and so is a children's book illustrator. Like
mm.
what designates like an artist from an illustrator? And I mean, I guess we've kind of already deciphered like cartoonist, but that's something that's always kind of odd to me too, because
Uh-huh.
like I kind of have like kind of broad, kind of specific definition of an illustrator, but I don't know if it even makes sense. But it's kind of how I always think about it. But um, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about that, Ken. Like, what do you kind of designate as an illustrator?
Right. So we can get into my definition, and then we'll go to yours for contrast for sure.
Yeah.
But what I think like an illustrator is, it's like I think if you're an artist, you have the ability to be all three. Like you have the ability to go to any of the three like branches or even more. Like you can, if you're an artist, you can write for yourself and become a cartoonist. You can become an illustrator. You can become a caricature artist or a webtoons artist or a comic creator. But an illustrator is somebody who specifically is trying to convey a story in one singular image. It doesn't even have to be a story, but they're trying to convey a concept in one image, and they could spend as much time as I take to do a comic page to do that one illustration, um, because it requires that much thought because it's going to be the only image that somebody's looking at. So it needs to like pull the reader in, pull people's attention, and make deliver the concept to the viewer pretty much in one single
Mhm.
shot,
Okay, so like in one image, you tell a story. That's kind of what you would say like an illustrator
or
is.
convey an idea. You know what I mean?
Convey an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, like I always thought like with an illustrator, and it's a very, very kind of broad thing, but it's like a person's interpretation of something. Meaning like,
Hmm.
okay, like you see that building or you see a city skyline or whatever, you see a handful of buildings. You're not drawing that building exactly. You are drawing your impression of that building. Like
Oh, okay, okay.
that's what I always thought an illustrator was. But, I know there's a lot of, like, gray area in there,
Uh-huh.
but that's kind of how I always saw it. That's why I think, you know, someone who's dry who someone a comics drawer will say, since it's
Yeah.
not any of these terms, you know say they get a script in from a writer,
Hmm.
like, I would say that they're illustrating that script because they're taking those words and they're drawing their impression of those words, onto paper or onto the screen or whatever. So like
Right.
that's why like I don't know. I just always think that there's just so much like mud kind of fuzziness in between these terms. And um it's something that I don't know why I think about it often, but I'm always like,
Mhm.
well, why is that guy called an illustrator and that guy called an artist?
Right.
You know, and I mean, we're not going to have the answers here. There probably is no answer, but it's just something that I kind of always think of.
Yeah, the way I think about it is like you want to define yourself as the most broad definition that will get you the most work or will convey the idea of what you do to the most amount of people. And I think as you go along in your career, you find what you like to do and what you don't like to do and what you get paid for and what you do for fun. And so when you find that like kind of cross section between what you get paid for and what you like to do, that's what you define yourself as. So like
Yeah,
you like creating fan art and getting paid for it, then like people will happily pay you for fan art. So now you're a fan artist.
hmm,
Maybe people don't call themselves that. Maybe they call themselves an illustrator, but um, or you like drawing Batman. You don't necessarily like the writing end. You don't like inking. You don't like coloring. You just like penciling. You just like drawing the comic. So that makes you like a penciler or like a comic book artist. So it's like you find your like what you like to do and you find that like cross section between what you get paid to do. And I think
yeah,
that's what people end up defining themselves as.
yeah, for sure. And I think just to kind of like bring it full circle, bring it back home. I at this point in my career, I like you, Ken. I call myself a cartoonist because I think
Nice.
that's what I lend to. That's what I like to do. I write, draw, color, whatever.
Right.
Um, you know, and like there was times throughout earlier in my career where I was like, okay, I'll put an artist. Okay, I'll put an illustrator. Okay, I'll put a cartoonist, and it was kind of just like an ever changing thing. But I really think what it boils down to is exactly like you said, is like, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a cover artist? You're calling yourself an artist. Do you want to be making your own comic, drawing the panels, storyboarding, all that kind of stuff? You're gonna be a cartoonist. So I
Right.
think that there's you designate how you want to evolve in the industry and how you want to be represented. Whether it's somebody searching for you or just mingling with your other creator friends. Um, and if you just want to be a writer, just be a writer, and that's
Yeah.
that's what
Just
it
fuck
is,
all this other stuff, man. Just
yeah, just fuck it all, you don't
yeah.
have to be an artist, illustrator, or cartoonist, just be a writer.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I think I just kind of wanted to talk about this topic a little bit. I just think it's kind of interesting, especially maybe for some of you guys kind of starting out, kind of really trying to find your position in the industry and kind of what to call yourself so you can you know um, display the work in a credible manner and kind of be referred to how you want to be referred to.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's all about
yeah,
all a part of like branding yourself, you
yeah,
know, in the industry. And then what you want to be known as so that people know like, okay, this is what he does and they can know it at a glance or in one word.
exactly. So hopefully that helps you guys out there. Let us know what you are in the comments. Hey, if you're a cartoonist, let us know. If you're a cover artist, let us know as well. And let's kind of share each other's passions down there in the comments, man.
Yeah.
Um, but Ken, I think that does it for this episode, man. This was a good one.
Yeah.
Where can the good people out there find you? Where can they read Air Rider?
Everyone can find me on Twitter at thecomicsgrind. I post there pretty much every day, several times a day. So come check me out. And I'm also on Instagram at comiken. And I guess I'm gonna start posting there every day as well, just to try to get my work out there more. And I make the comic called Air Rider High School Hero. And you guys can find that on Global Comics. All the links will be in the description below, so just check that out.
Awesome, man. Yeah, Instagram is the place to be, dude.
Yeah, it seems like
This
it these
this
days.
X Twitter stuff, I don't know what's going on. I still don't know what to call it, but
Yep.
uh, You guys can find me on Twitter, X, whatever it is, and on Instagram most actively at Nico_writes. And you can subscribe for free to my Substack at nicorodriguez.substack.com. I'm going to be putting up a new newsletter this month. Probably going to talk a little bit about, like we talked about earlier, Sergio Aragones, and maybe show you guys some of my favorite gag strips. So be on the lookout for that. It'd be kind of cool just to kind of give you an update and some other little cool little info on things that I like. But other than that, I think that does it for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Peace.